At Christmas, Mom forgot my plate again. I took the roast I brought and left. They called me rude. Then the caterer sent a $1.200 unpaid invoice in my name. My name is Aaron, and there's a running joke in my family that I was born late to my own party. It's the kind of joke that gets unfunny when it follows you into every holiday like a stray cat that refuses to leave. If I roll into a birthday dinner 10 minutes after the appetizers, I'm late. If I text I'm on my way from work, I'm late. If I show up on the dot but my mother hasn't set a plate for me, well, guess who's late for not having the manners to set her own? That joke is the way my mother, Charlotte, smooths over certain patterns. Patterns like forgetting my place at the table. Literally. The first time she forgot, I was 8. I remember because my grandmother, Nana Ruth, always baked shortbread and cut it into 8s, each of us grandkids getting one perfect wedge. That year, after they called everyone to the dining room, there wasn't a chair for me. The table looked like a catalog. Spruce garland, glittering ornaments, steak knives lined up like soldiers, and I hovered behind my sister Lena's chair with that horrible warm feeling in my throat. My mother tutted, clapped her hands, and told me to grab the stool from the kitchen, honey, and be quick. By the time I squeezed in at the corner of the table, the gravy had cooled, and someone had already accidentally eaten my shortbread. You tell yourself things as a kid so you can go on being a kid. They were busy, it's not personal. But years pass, and eventually you realize the forgetting wasn't random. It was me. It was always me. So I started planning. By the time I was 17, I learned to call my mother a week before Christmas. Do you want me to bring potatoes or dessert? She would assign me the most labor-intensive side, something I couldn't possibly mess up, like the praline sweet potatoes that required candying pecans while stirring on low heat for 30 minutes. I would arrive early, sweating through my coat, and somehow there still wouldn't be a place card with my name. The other kids got theirs in cursive, Lena's with a little snowflake sticker in the corner. Eventually, I began leaving sticky notes on the hutch, like I was reserving a parking spot. Aaron. The joke got fresh legs. I became the one who marks her territory. It worked 1 year. Then the next year, there it was again, my seat at the edge of the console table near the outlet, where the lamp wobbled if you breathed on it. I moved out. I moved on. But that's not how Christmas works in my family. Christmas is a pilgrimage back to whatever roles you were assigned before you grew eyebrows. You walk in, and your mother looks at your coat and tells you what your coat says about your life choices. Your sister tilts her head in a way that means you'll hear a story later about how someone is worried about you. Your father, well, my father left when I was 9, and my stepdad Gary fills the space with dad jokes that land like rolled quarters. The Christmas before last, I decided to fix it from my end. I showed up with folding place cards of my own ivory cardstock from the craft store, my name in nice thick black marker. I set mine in the middle of the side that faced the window, and then I helped set the rest of the table. When Gary asked, "What's this?" and tapped the card, I said, "It's to make your life easier." He chuckled and told me to save my type A for my own apartment. And somehow, by the time we sat, my card was gone. There was a smear of gravy in its place. I ate my dinner leaning against the counter, pretending I liked the idea of standing. The whole memory tastes like lukewarm ham. After that, I made a different resolution. I would never again arrive at my mother's house in December without bringing exactly what I needed to eat and exactly what I needed to leave early if I had to. So this past Christmas, I cooked. I didn't mean to turn it into a whole production, but once I started rubbing garlic and rosemary into a beautiful prime rib roast, searing it in my Dutch oven, listening to that violent, happy crackle, I felt a kind of peace I rarely feel inside my mother's walls. I prepped a vegetarian loaf, too, because my own best friend, Maya, has this line about love being measured in side dishes. I made a horseradish cream that would make grown men cry, I packed everything into insulated bags, set it in my trunk, and texted my mother, "On my way with the main. See you in 20. I was early. I was so early that the sky still had that blue that belongs to convinces yourself you're a morning person. The driveway was already full. Lena and her husband Mark were there, along with a handful of cousins, and the house had that roaring oven heat that makes the windows blush. I hauled the heavy Dutch oven to the door, and my mother met me with a smile so bright it could start fires. "Oh, sweetheart," she sang, "you shouldn't have." "You told me to handle the main," I said, giving her the pot so carefully you would think it contained a sleeping kitten. "This is it." I meant, she kissed the air beside my cheek. "You are just the sweetest. Put it by the stove. We have the caterers in the other room, so we'll keep your pot warm." I blinked at her. "The caterers?" She stepped aside, and there they were in the formal dining room, 2 women in black with crisp aprons arranging trays of salmon pinwheels and potato gratin, tiny ramekins of creme brulee lined up like polished stones. The table was set as if the house itself were showing off. Name cards. Linen napkins folded like something that required a tutorial. My mother's good china that hadn't seen sunlight since the 90s. "What are they for?" I asked, stupidly, because what else would they be for? I was suddenly hyper-aware of the roast, this big, fragrant animal, in a pot cradled to my hip, like I was bringing a gift to the king, right as the king announced he'd gone vegan. For dinner, my mother laughed in the way she laughs when someone doesn't get a joke that only she finds funny. It was just too much for me this year. You know how I get? So you can finally relax for once and enjoy yourself. Isn't that nice? The women in black smiled the professional smile of people who have signed non-disclosure agreements. I set my roast in a spot by the stove, feeling the way a performer must feel when they walk out on stage and the curtain's already down. "Okay," I said, swallowing. "Then I'll just heat this when it's time to eat." She did that fast flutter with her hands that means, "Stop complicating my plans. We'll see, honey. Don't fuss." I went to hang my coat and scout the table. Lena and Mark were already there with drinks, Lena in a dress that looked like she'd been poured into it, Mark gripping a whiskey like he needed to tattoo it to his hand like a sailor man. The place cards were adorable, hand-lettered with gold ink. Ruth. Gary. Lena. Mark. There was no Aaron. There was a blank card, tucked toward the head of the table, with a blot of ink on it. The extra chair was pushed against the wall under a nutcracker that looked like he could file HR reports. I stood there, feeling heat creep up from my collar to my face. In a different version of this morning, I would have laughed. I would have hauled over the straggler chair, pulled a napkin off the pile, and made room for myself because it was obvious. But I could see my mother coming from the kitchen, wiping her hands in that way that communicates, "Let me. You always overreact." And I was suddenly 11 again, a kid with a plate balanced on a TV tray, watching other people cut into roast while I gnawed a roll. "Where's mine?" I said it like I was asking the air. Lena turned with that smile like a camera shutter. "Your what?" "My place card, my seat." I kept my voice light in a way I'd trained it to be, bubbly like soda over crushed glass. "Oh, Mom, did you forget Aaron's?" she asked, too loud. "Again?" She put a hand over her heart, fake thoughtful. "What a shock." Mark snorted. "We can grab the piano bench." "It's fine," I said quickly. I walked to the kitchen, found a spare plate in the cabinet that always smells like lemon, and set it next to Lena's. There was barely room. I could feel my mother's eyes on me from the doorway. "I still need to heat the roast," I said, avoiding the subject of my seat like it was a drop of oil spattering from the pan. "We don't have room," my mother said. "They're using the ovens," she added, with a nod toward the caterers like they were royalty. "We'll figure it out." "Mom," I said, and my voice came out smaller than I intended. "You told me to bring the main." She had the nerve to pout like I'd wronged her. "And I appreciate it, sweetheart." Lena wandered over and poked her finger toward the pot. "What is it?" "Prime rib." "Oh, fun," she said, the words sounding like she'd bitten into a lemon seed. "Mark doesn't eat red meat anymore. Cholesterol." Mark rolled his eyes. "Since last week," he said to me, and wagged his eyebrows like it was an inside joke Lena wouldn't like. I didn't laugh. Someone put on Bing Crosby. Gary made a show of opening champagne, the cork thwacking the crown molding. The house was full of this glittering bustle that made me feel like a stranger. Time floated, or maybe I dissociated a little. Maya would say I went into my white noise trance, and then I heard my mother's voice calling, "Dinner!" I stood with everyone else and filed into the dining room. The table looked like a picture you click on the internet. Too perfect, edited within an inch of its life. When I reached for the back of the chair I'd wedged in by Lena, she slid forward and sat, blocking that space with the casual entitlement of someone finding a purse seat. There was no spot left that wasn't already claimed by a body or a plate. I stood there holding my own plate like a child in a cafeteria line who missed the bell. "Oh, Erin," my mother said, touching my elbow as she scooted past me, "just grab a seat at the kitchen counter and we'll fix you a plate." My throat pinched. "I'm good," I said. The words leapt out of my mouth and sounded like someone else had thrown them. I set my plate down on the sideboard like I was putting a piece on a chessboard. And then, feeling watched, feeling like a goldfish in a bowl, one walked to the kitchen. The roast sat there, heavy and obedient in its pot, the kitchen as warm as a memory. I lifted it, braced it against my hip, and carried it to the door. "Where are you going?" My mother's voice cut across the music. It had that high, brittle varnish that means she's about to perform. "I'm heading home," I said. I heard the room go quiet, like someone sucked the sound out with a straw. "Right now?" Gary asked. "But I brought food to contribute. I did what I said I'd do. I didn't raise my voice. I'm taking what I brought." "Don't be dramatic," Lena said. I had my hand on the doorknob. "Enjoy your catered dinner." "Erin," my mother snapped, "don't you dare storm out and ruin this for everyone." I turned. My heart was thudding so hard I could feel it in my teeth. "You forgot my seat. Again." For a second, just one, you could see it all on her face. The calculation, the little flinch of being caught, the way anger bloomed over embarrassment. Then she smoothed it away. "Stop making everything about you," she said, like she'd rehearsed. "This is Christmas." "I'm going," I said, and stepped out into the cold. The air outside shocked me, and not just because it was December. I put the pot in my trunk and drove home, with the windows cracked, and the heat blasting so hard the vents whistled. At a stoplight, I texted Maya. I left my mom's with the roast. "I think I just committed a felony against Christmas." She replied in under a minute. "Proud of you. Come over. I've got plates and 0 emotional landmines." We ate my roast on her couch, with our legs tucked under blankets, watching a movie that was half snow and half kissing. The meat was perfect, pink at the center and silky at the edges, and for the first time in years, I had Christmas dinner sitting down at a table that took me seriously. My phone lit up like a lighthouse. Group texts from the family bloomed with the hurt and outrage of people whose script had been interrupted. "Erin, that was incredibly rude. You embarrassed your mother in front of guests. You made a scene. People saw you walking out with a pot. No class. Lena's friends are here." I typed. "I did not make a scene. I left with what I brought because there wasn't a seat for me. Again, Merry Christmas." There was a long, sputtering pause, and then my mother. "You are so ungrateful. You think the world revolves around you. We had everything arranged, and you made it difficult." I put my phone on Do Not Disturb and took another bite of roast. Maya tapped my knee. "You okay?" "I'm fine," I said, and for once it was true. In my chest, something that had been coiled for decades loosened a fraction, like a fist opening. 2 days later, my peace was interrupted by an envelope that looked like a wedding invitation and felt like a bill. Inside, an invoice from Pine and Time Catering for $1.200, payable upon receipt. The name at the top was mine. There's a particular quality to the shock you feel when you see your own name where it absolutely should not be. It's not just surprise. It's a sense of wrongness, like walking into your apartment and finding all your furniture rearranged. My first reaction was some flavor of denial. It has to be a mistake. They sent this to the wrong Aaron. Maybe there's another Aaron who hosted a party on December 25th, where the listed event address happens to be my mother's house. The line items were neat and brutal. Holiday dinner buffet for 12. Artisanal breads, butter, salmon pinwheels, potato gratin, roasted Brussels sprouts, winter salad, dessert sampler. Subtotal, $1, $150. Transportation and setup. Gratuity. Total, $1, $200. A digital contract number in the corner. A due date circled in a polite red. I flipped the page over, half expecting a note. Nothing. The email version landed in my inbox 20 minutes later, identical to the paper one. Dear Aaron Morgan, it read, "Thank you for choosing Pine and Time Catering for your holiday event. Attached, please find your invoice. We appreciate your prompt payment." My mouth went dry. I dialed the number at the bottom of the invoice, pacing in a small, anxious rectangle in my kitchen while it rang. A woman picked up and introduced herself as Danielle. She sounded like her smile had been placed there systematically. "Hi, Danielle," I said. "This is Aaron Morgan. I received an invoice in my name. I think there's been a mistake." "Let me pull that up," she chirped, and I could hear her keystrokes like a soft drum solo. "Okay, Aaron Morgan, December 25th, 12 guests, event at..." I heard her read my mother's address. "What seems to be the issue?" "I didn't order catering," I said. "I was a guest at that address. I brought my own food and left early. I didn't sign a contract." There was a pause. A tiny, bureaucratic intake of breath. "The contract is in your name," Danielle said. "It was signed electronically. The contact listed for the event was Charlotte Henderson. Is that name familiar?" "That's my mother." "Ah," the professional smile changed timbre. "Can you send me the contract?" I asked. "And whatever records you have, call logs, emails?" "We can send you the executed contract and the invoice," she said. "As for call logs, we have notes on the account. One moment." I listened to the quiet hum of hold music that sounded like it had been programmed to soothe angry people. She came back. "Our notes indicate the order was placed by phone." The caller identified herself as the party host and indicated that Aaron would be covering the cost. "The email we have on file is..." She spelled out my email address exactly. "The signature on the contract matches the name Aaron Morgan." The room got 10 degrees colder. I grabbed a pen. "Can you tell me the phone number from which the order was placed?" "I can't share the full number," she said, "but I can confirm the last 4 digits." "Please." 4278. It was not my number. It was familiar, though, in that way numbers are familiar when you've entered them your whole life. It was Lena's. I thanked Danielle and hung up because my hands were shaking, and I wasn't about to cry on a customer service call. I tried to call my mother. She didn't answer. I tried Lena. Straight to voicemail. I texted the family group chat. "Did you put a catering order in my name?" My mother bubbled. "What are you talking about?" "I received an invoice for $1, $200 from the caterer. In my name. They said the order listed me as paying. They have my email. It says I signed the contract." "Lena, you said you were covering the main. We assumed you meant dinner. You left with your roast, so..." I felt heat crawl up my neck. "Covering the main means the roast I cooked. It does not mean I bought you a catered dinner." "My mother, don't take that tone. You've always been so literal. This is why nobody can joke around you. It was chaos that morning. I told them you were bringing the main because that's what you said. It's not our fault if you didn't understand how holidays work. So you used my name and my email to sign a contract?" I could see the dots bubbling, stopping, bubbling again. Finally, nobody used anything. I told them your name because you were supposed to be providing the main. It makes sense the invoice would go to you. I wanted to scream. I didn't. I called Maya instead, put her on speaker, and spread the papers out on my kitchen table as if my indignation could organize them into some courtroom exhibit. Maya works in graphic design. She has a good eye for typography and a better eye for BS. Send me the contract, she said. I forwarded the email from Pine and Time and watched the little gray progress bar chew its way across my screen. Okay, she said after a beat. I heard her clicking. This signature, it looks like it was typed and then stylized, not signed with a finger or stylus. What does that mean? It means whoever signed it just typed Aaron Morgan into a field and the software put a handwriting font over it. She zoomed the PDF and I imagined her face close to her laptop. Do you sign your name with a tall E and a squared off R? No, my R has a long tail. This R is a typeface. If this goes to dispute, they can't say, we have her signature like it's biometric. I sat down and stared at the wall. Something old and tired inside me felt like it finally had a legal department. They also told me the order was placed from a number ending in 4278. That's Lena's phone. She always hides her phone face down when she's at the table like she's a spy. It's practically her signature. You need to call the caterer back, Maya said, therapist quiet. Ask for documentation showing who the on-site contact was and who accepted delivery. Tell them you're disputing responsibility and ask them to put your account on hold while they investigate. Then freeze your credit right now and put this all in writing. I did all of that. I called Pine and Time back, asked for a manager, and got passed to a man named Gavin, whose voice sounded like he coached youth soccer. I told him the story without crying or making jokes or apologizing. I said the words identity misuse because theft seemed like the wrong shade of extreme for what had happened, but also heartbreakingly accurate. We want to be fair here, he said. Let me make a note to put a temporary hold on the account while we confirm the details. I'll have Danielle send you the contract, the invoices, and our internal note that lists the on-site contact. For what it's worth, our staff wrote that when they arrived, Charlotte, met them at the door and signed for the delivery. My mother, I said, like confessing a secret after it has already been printed on a billboard. I froze my credit with all 3 bureaus, while I could still feel the chemical burn of adrenaline in my chest. It was surprisingly easy. The websites are built for moments just like this, which is comforting and horrifying. I filed an FTC identity theft report, clicking boxes like a punch card fortune teller. I typed a dispute letter to Pine and Time that sounded more collected than I felt. I, Aaron Morgan, did not enter into a contract with your company. I did not authorize any person to sign on my behalf. I did not provide my email address for this purpose. I asked them to reissue the invoice to the party, who actually organized the event and signed for delivery. I CC'd myself at 3 different email addresses and printed a hard copy for good measure. In the family chat, my mother performed indignation like a monologue she'd been hoping to audition all her life. I can't believe you would accuse your sister of something so ugly. This is why we can't have nice things. Lena sent a selfie of her holding up a heart-shaped hand sign with the caption, "Love you too, sis." I had to set my phone down again before I threw it into a pot of water on instinct. Nana called me privately that night. She speaks exactly like shortbread, sweet and brittle. "Darling," she said, "I was so sorry to hear about the kerfuffle. Your mother is beside herself." "Did she tell you about the invoice?" I asked. There was a small exhale. "She said there had been a misunderstanding, that you promised to bring the main and then ran off." "I didn't run. I left with what I brought because my seat didn't exist." Again. Nana was silent, and in her silence I heard all the Christmases where she set a second table in the den because we're short on chairs. All the times she had smoothed my hair like she was apologizing in code. "I know," she said finally, so softly I had to press the phone to my ear. "I've seen it. I'm sorry. The next morning, I woke to a new email from Pine and Time, Danielle's crisp prose attached to PDFs. There it was, the contract executed by Aaron Morgan, the site contact listed as Charlotte Henderson, a note time-stamped the morning of Christmas. Caller confirmed Aaron will be covering cost, as she is, hosting main dish. There was a phone record with the date and time of the call and the company's log of the number they dialed. The number matched Lena's. I forwarded it to my mother and sister with a message that might as well have been a subpoena. Please see attached. I am not responsible for this invoice. Please contact Pine and Time to correct their records. It took 5 minutes for Lena to reply. OMG, you're being so dramatic. You said main. That means main event. That means food. You've made such a big deal out of your cooking this year. Like anyone cares. I typed, deleted, typed. Main means roast. The roast I brought. The roast I left with because I wasn't invited to the table like a full person. She read it and then, inexplicably, sent a gif of a woman rolling her eyes. My mother chimed in. I will call them and explain that there was a misunderstanding, but you need to stop attacking your sister. This is why she doesn't include you in things. I had to laugh because the sentence was so upside down it made me dizzy. I printed everything again, slid it into a manila folder, and planned a visit to my mother's house that afternoon. I texted Nana, if you're up for it, I might come by later. She responded with a heart and a barb. I'll put the kettle on. We'll have our own table. Before I drove over, I stopped by Maya's. She met me at the door in sweatpants and hugged me with enough force to crack my stiff rib cage. You look like someone preparing to argue a case on Law and Order, she said. That's exactly the vibe, I said. The winter finale. Do you want me there? I pictured the look on my mother's face if I showed up with backup. The performance aspect of it was too irresistible. Tempting, I said, but I need to stand there myself and say what I'm going to say. What are you going to say? She asked. Tying her hair into a knot like this was a plan you needed a bun for. I'm going to say, stop using my name for your bills. Stop telling me I'm the problem when you forget my seat. I am not an afterthought at my own family's table. Maya smiled in that way she does when a design finally clicks. Go get 'em, Aaron. My mother's house glowed like a gingerbread display in a store window when I arrived. She opened the door with an expression she saves for situations where she feels wronged but also has an audience. Oh, she said, surprised but not surprised that I would show up unannounced. Come in. Lena was on the couch, blanket over her legs, scrolling her phone so intently you'd think there was a prize hidden somewhere in her feed. Gary stood up from his recliner, then sat down again when he sensed the current in the room. Nana was not there. She had the good sense to stay home when the weather turns and tempers with it. I got the documents from the caterer, I said, not bothering with ornament. I held up the manila folder like I was serving it with hors d'oeuvre. They show the order was placed from your phone, Lena. They list Mom as the on-site contact. They show a typed signature with my name. My mother's mouth opened and closed, a fish breathing air. You know how confusing those online forms are? Then why was it placed by phone? I asked. Lena curled her lip. We told them you were providing the main. They needed a name to put on the paperwork. You're the one who stomped out with your stew. Roast, I said, and I walked out with my dignity. My mother bristled. You humiliated me in front of our guests. You made me look like a fool. You did that when you sat 12 people and forgot one, I said. I had rehearsed it in my head so many times, and still it came out like a bruise pressed too hard. You forgot me, again, and then you used my name, my identity, to pay for your solution to your chaos. Gary cleared his throat. Now, girls. Don't, I said to him, and he sank back into his chair with a rustle. Lena scoffed. It's just a name on a bill. Nobody stole your kidney. It's not just a name. I stepped forward and set the printed contract on the coffee table. The paper looked absurdly small between a stack of glossy magazines and a bowl of gold ornaments that said joy in cursive. It's a signature that binds someone financially. It's a string that can yank on credit, on collection agencies, on my actual life. You can't decide I'm responsible for your choices because it's convenient. My mother's eyes flared in that specific blue that means tears are on the way, and with them, an apology that isn't. You've always been so sensitive, she said. We thought you had finally grown up enough to do something nice for your family. I did do something nice. I spent money and time to cook something beautiful, and I was told there wasn't a place for me to sit and eat it. For a second, the room was very quiet, like it was waiting for someone to call cut. Lena clicked her phone off, finally, and met my eyes. You want to feel special all the time, she said. It's exhausting. I want to feel included, I said. Those are not the same thing. She rolled her shoulders like cat stretching, then said something that told the whole story. We told the caterer you were paying because you said you were bringing the main. You left. Someone had to cover the cost. Not me, I said. Not with my name. Not ever again. Fine, my mother snapped, the tears drying up with the speed of a weather change. I will call them and fix this little mess. It is not little, I said more sharply than I meant to, and it's not a mess I made. My mother looked like she wanted to throw the bowl that said joy. Gary put his hand on her knee, like he was handling a large dog. Lena crossed her arms and looked at the ceiling, which was a mistake because there was nothing there that could help her. I need it in writing, I said. I need Pine and Time to send me an email stating I am not responsible for this invoice. I need you to call them today. I've already filed a dispute. If there's one more piece of mail with my name on it for this, I will file a police report for identity misuse. And I will not be back here for Easter or Mother's Day or the 4th of July or any Thursday if this is how I'm treated. There's a sound a house makes when everyone inside it understands that something structural has shifted. It's not the creak of wood. It's the silence of a shared delusion collapsing. My mother looked at me like she did not know me. Lena looked like she'd been asked to do algebra. Gary looked at the television as if it might offer a distraction. Nobody said, "We're sorry." Nobody said, "Sit down." So I left. It took less time to get to my car than it did to learn how to stop explaining myself. At home, waiting for me like a prize on a game show, was an email from Danielle at Pine and Time. Per our investigation, we have updated our records to reflect that Aaron Morgan is not responsible for the outstanding balance. We have contacted the on-site party for payment. Please find attached confirmation of the account notation. I exhaled so hard I had to sit down. I forwarded it to my mother and sister with 2 sentences. Please handle your invoice. Do not use my name again without my consent. For a while, nothing came back. Then, from my mother, I hope you're happy. You've created so much drama. And for what? Over a chair? I put my phone face down and let my dinner go cold. Collapse sounds dramatic until you realize that most collapses happen quietly, like a souffle. 2 days went by. I went to work, made my coffee, stood in my shower replaying conversations like they were radio programs. Maya texted me memes and little reminders to eat. I told myself, out loud sometimes, because saying it helps, you did not overreact. You asked for a seat at a table where you were told you didn't belong. Then the social verdict began to arrive, not from strangers on the internet, but from people who know our names and birthdays, and yet somehow missed the plot. A cousin called to tell me that everyone was talking about my Christmas tantrum. A neighbor of my mother's sent me a message that began with, "I'm not taking sides, but," and then described, in detail, the moment she saw me carrying a heavy pot across the porch. Lena's friend Sierra posted a story on Instagram of the catered spread with the caption, "When you have to cover for flaky siblings," and a little winking emoji that made me want to throw my phone in the ocean, retrieve it, and throw it again. I ignored them until I couldn't. Then I did what women do when they are tired of defending themselves. I sent receipts. To the cousin, I replied with the email from the caterer. To the neighbor, I said, "Next time you have questions about my behavior, you can ask me directly." To Sierra, I sent nothing. The cost-benefit analysis of engaging with someone who thinks content is the same as life was not worth the battery. Nana called again. "You must be worn out," she said, and I could hear her kitchen behind her, the clink of a spoon against a mug. "I want you to know I've spoken with your mother." I told her I was disappointed. I told her I've watched this nonsense for years. She hung up on me. That's all right. Sometimes a person needs to hear the truth twice. Once with their ears, once when they count back how many people told them the same story. "I don't know what to do next," I said, tears finally breaking through in a way that felt less like sadness and more like a pressure valve. Part of me wants to show up there and flip the table. The other part wants to never drive down that street again. "You don't have to decide today," Nana said. "You do have to eat. Come over. I set a place for you." I sat with her at her small round table that afternoon, the kind with scalloped edges that leaves little dents in your forearms if you lean too hard. She put out ham sandwiches and a small glass dish of pickles and a plate that had a wedge of shortbread on it like it had been waiting there all along. "I do set a place for you," she said, when she noticed my face breaking in a particular way. "Even when you're not coming. It's a habit." She passed me a napkin. "I'm sorry I didn't make more fuss before. I should have. But your mother, she has a way of making people think they're unreasonable for wanting what is reasonable." "I know," I said, my throat tight. "She says I'm dramatic, like she's saying the weather is unfortunate." "Well," Nana said, "this weather looks like a woman drawing a line in the snow." I laughed, watery. "You should write greeting cards." She patted my hand. "I write my own kind of cards." The next day, I got a voicemail from Gary. "Hey, kiddo," he said, trying to pitch his voice to a tone that would make me forget. "Your mom tells me there's some kind of misunderstanding. I wanted to say from me, if it helps, I'm sorry. I should have caught the table situation before it got to you. I'll do better. It was a small thing, late and not enough, but real. I saved it." My mother sent nothing. Lena sent a message that said, "You've always wanted to be the victim. Congratulations." Then she sent a screenshot of a new invoice from Pine and Time, this time with her name at the top. The total was the same. She added, "Paid. Happy now?" I stared at the screen. You would think that would feel like a win. It felt like a door sighing shut. I typed, "I'm happy the caterer got paid. I'm not happy that it took this to make you see me." No reply. In that gray week between Christmas and New Year's, where time goes slow and fast at once, I made practical changes. I took my keys off the ring that also held the spare for my mother's house and put it in a drawer where it couldn't weigh down my bag. I moved the Christmas card I'd bought for her, untouched, in the trash. I made a list in a notebook labeled Boundaries, because a therapist once told me that writing them makes them more likely to exist outside your head. Next year, if invited, confirm seat in advance or decline. Do not bring food to be used as bait for false gratitude. Leave early when the first red flag waves. The part of me that organizes, that creates neat files and folds laundry with corners, was soothed by the list. The part of me that wanted my mother to call and say, "I'm sorry, I'm so sorry," ached. On New Year's Day, there was a knock at my door. Not the postman, not a neighbor tapping lightly, but the kind of knock that expects to be let in, because it always has been. My mother stood there, in a pale blue coat that looked like something from an old movie, her hair sprayed into submission, her mouth set like a bolt. "I brought you this," she said, and handed me a Tupperware filled with yellow squares, lemon bars, an apology in pastry form. My mother believes food can undo words, the way a ribbon covers a rip in a dress. "Thank you," I said, not moving to step aside. She looked at the threshold like it might bite. "I don't want to fight," she said, which is something people say when they want to fight without the vocabulary for one. I wanted to explain. "You want to explain," I repeated, because sometimes repeating helps people hear the absurdity. I was overwhelmed, she said. I thought if I catered, we could all just enjoy ourselves. You're always going on about your cooking, so I figured you could manage one thing without making a production of it. I made a roast, I said. I came early. You didn't set a seat for me. She flinched. I forgot. You forget me, I said. It came out colder than I meant, and true. And when I said I was bringing the main, you decided that meant I was paying for your party. The caterer believed you because you used my name. That's not forgetting. That's using. She swallowed. For a second, the Charlotte who smoothed over everything wavered, and I saw the woman under her, the one who is terrified of being judged as less than perfect. I didn't think it mattered whose name was on a piece of paper, she said. It matters, I said. Names matter. Seats matter. The way you make people feel matters. We stood there like that, two women on a doorstep who share bones and history, and very little else. Do you want to come in? I asked, finally, because I am not heartless, and also because part of me still wants to make room for her. She looked past me into my apartment, eyes snagging on the small details that she catalogs for later commentary. The plant that needed water, the stack of mail on the table, the thrifted lamp. No, she said, I have to get back. People are coming over. Of course they were. People are always coming over when something hard needs to be faced. I nodded. She turned to go, then turned back and added, in the tone of a person who has decided to grant a concession, I'll try to remember your seat next time. I laughed because it was either that or cry. Don't, I said. There doesn't need to be a next time. Her face tightened. Don't be childish. I'm being clear. She stared at me like clarity was an insult, and then she left, her perfume trailing like the memory of someone you almost recognize in a crowded place. After she was gone, I ate a lemon bar. It was too sweet and powdery, and I didn't enjoy it. But I ate it because part of me always eats what my mother brings. Like a habit you can't quit without noticing 100 tiny ways you've trained yourself to say yes. A week later, I heard from Pine and Time one last time, a short, efficient message from Gavin thanking me for my professionalism and confirming the account had been settled by the on-site party. He added that they had updated their intake procedures to require the payer to confirm by email from their own address. I wrote back to thank him and meant it. How many little systems had my mother relied on to make her version of the story work? How many will just and people always and don't be dramatic had I swallowed? At work, my colleague Jess asked about my holiday the way people do, breezy. I told her, in a toned-down version, that there had been some family drama, and then, because telling the story felt like opening a window in a stuffy room, I told her the whole thing. She listened, eyes big, then said, I can't believe she didn't set a seat for you. I can, I said. It's the most believable part. She shook her head. My mother used to do this thing where she'd forget my birthday, unless it fell on a weekend. She'd claim we celebrated in spirit. It took me until 30 to realize my job isn't to be grateful for crumbs. We went to lunch and ate soup that burned our tongues, and laughed until my eyes watered. People talk about chosen family, and it sounds like a slogan until you're in a kitchen with someone who keeps extra bowls because they like seeing you fed. Sometime in February, I got a card in the mail that wasn't a bill or a flyer. Nana's handwriting looped on the envelope. Inside, a photograph of her table, 2-plate set, one with a tiny paper place card that said Aaron in her tidy script. On the back she'd written, there is always a seat for you here. P.S. Tell Maya I printed the recipe for that horseradish cream. When I tell this story out loud now, I try not to perform it like I'm auditioning for sympathy. I tell it like a fact. My mother forgot my seat again. I brought a roast. I left. They called me rude. Then a bill arrived, addressed to me for a dinner I didn't order. I pushed back. They said I was dramatic. The caterer investigated. The truth lined up like silverware. We all made choices. People want to know, always. Will you go back next Christmas? Will you forgive them? Will you let it go? I don't know about forgiveness. It's a word people use to mean stop making me feel bad. Letting go, I understand. I let go of being the family's shock absorber. I let go of explaining my hurt as if it could be a persuasive essay. I let go of the idea that I have to keep showing up to be erased. I kept some things. I kept my roast recipe and the way it makes the kitchen smell like home. I kept Nana's place card and tucked it into the frame of my mirror so I see it when I'm smoothing my hair before work. I kept the email from Pine and Time in a folder called Proof, not because I need to prove anything to anyone anymore, but because once you've lived a long time in a house where your reality is up for debate, it's nice to look at a PDF and have it say in clean font, "You are right." As for the social verdict, it came, from people who think holidays are sacred, and from those who think they are an obligation, from those who believe family means tolerating anything, and those who believe family is who sets a place for you, no questions asked. I've learned not to rehearse a defense for all of it. The world is full of juries you didn't ask to be summoned to. Some are fair, some are bored, some want to see a spectacle. I'll save my speeches for rooms where someone has set a chair with my name on it. When the year turned and the cold sharpened and my apartment felt like it belonged to me in a way it hadn't before, I cooked the roast again, not for an audience, not to prove anything. I braised the vegetables low and slow and whisked the cream until it stood up in soft peaks. I set one place at my table, then two, because Maya was coming over, and when she arrived, kicking snow off her boots, she laughed at the little card I'd made, a square of paper with her name in thick black marker. "You're ridiculous," she said, smiling. "I'm organized," I said. "Sit, eat." We ate until we were quiet, the kind of quiet that feels like a hand on your back when you're walking upstairs. We made room for seconds. When we were done, I wrapped leftovers and labeled them because future me is also someone I care about. I washed the dishes and put them in their places, and when I wiped the table, I didn't feel like I was erasing anything. I felt like I was setting something down that didn't belong to me anymore. There is an old story that says winter is when the earth rests, when things die back so they can grow again. It turns out you can do that with habits too. You can let something go cold and dark and still trust that under the frost there's a tender green that will find its own way toward the light. You can decide that your name belongs to you and so does your appetite. You can step out into the snow with a hot dish in your hands and head for a door where someone is waiting. A door that opens. A table where your chair has been waiting all along. Yeah.